Welcome to Every New Day, and this is NTV News. And today we're diving into the recent Polish presidential election, the upcoming Czechia elections in October 2025, and the 2026 Hungarian parliamentary elections. There's a lot to get through. These votes are reshaping Eastern Europe's political landscape, with major implications for NATO and the EU, as well as regional dynamics. So let's break it down in this deep dive, backed by the latest sources. On June the 1st, 2025, Poland's presidential election concluded with a historic runoff, the closest since 1989, with a record 71.6% turnout. That's a lot. Let's meet the two main candidates. Rafał Trzaskowski, Warsaw's mayor and civic coalition candidate, campaigned on a pro-EU platform, advocating for judicial reforms, same-sex civil unions, and abortion legalization. A former European Parliament member, he pushed for Poland to lead EU decisions alongside Germany and France, while increasing defense spending to 5% of GDP. Karol Nawrocki, a 42-year-old historian and amateur boxer, backed by the Nationalist Law and Justice Party, also known as the PIS party, ran on traditional Catholic values and Polish sovereignty. He opposed Ukraine's NATO and EU membership, criticized the EU's climate and migration policies, and has faced controversy over past ties to football hooliganism, which he called noble fights. The outcome? Nawrocki won with 50.89% to Trzaskowski's 49.11%, a razor-thin margin. The hard-right Confederation Party, led by candidates like Sławomir Mencen, drew 21% in the first round, boosting Nawrocki's runoff victory with their support. So what does this mean for Poland? Well, Nawrocki's win, cheered by EU skeptics like Hungary's Viktor Orbán and France's Marine Le Pen, strengthens the PIS's grip on the presidency. His veto power could block Prime Minister Donald Tusk's reforms on abortion, LGBTQ rights, and judicial independence, deepening political gridlock. Tusk has called for a confidence vote on June 11th of this year to shore up his coalition. A risky move to counter Nawrocki's influence. Poland's EU relations may cool, with Nawrocki favoring US ties, as seen in his endorsement by Donald Trump. This could align Poland with EU-skeptic nations like Hungary, complicating EU decisions on Ukraine and climate policy. But would that be necessarily a bad thing? Next, let's look at Czechia's presidential election in October of this year, a pivotal moment for its NATO and EU roles. The frontrunners are Andrej, Babiš, former Prime Minister and ANO party leader, and Danuše, Nerudová, an economist and former university rector. Babiš, a billionaire, led Czechia from 2017 to 2021. He's pro-NATO, but critical of EU regulations, supporting Ukraine militarily while prioritizing Czech interests. His past Communist Party ties and corruption charges, including a recent scandal involving his coalition partner, remain somewhat contentious. Nerudová, a center-right candidate, champions EU integration, green policies, and gender equality. She's a fresh face, but has faced criticism over mismanagement allegations at her university. Polls show Babiš leading with 35 to 40%, while Nerudová trails at 25 to 30%, though strategic voting could narrow the gap, as seen in 2023. The recent resignation of Justice Minister Paweł Błaszczak over a drug dealer scandal has boosted Babiš's campaign, highlighting government vulnerabilities. A Babiš victory could steer Czechia toward nationalism, straining EU cohesion while maintaining NATO commitments. Nerudova's win would deepen EU integration and progressive policies, reinforcing Czechia's role in Brussels. Both candidates support Ukraine, but Babiš's pragmatic stance might limit regional solidarity. Concerns about electoral manipulation, including foreign interference, are rising, with calls for robust monitoring. Now let's turn to Hungary's parliamentary elections in April 2026, where big changes are brewing. Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, leading Fidesz since 2010, faces a strong challenge from Péter Magyar's Tisza party. Orbán's EU-skeptic, sympathetic Russian policies and what has come to light recently as democratic backsliding intensified by new censorship laws have drawn criticism. Magyar, a former Fidesz insider, launched Tisza in 2024, campaigning on anti-corruption, pro-EU policies, and restoring democratic norms, whatever those may be. Polls show Tisza neck and neck with Fidesz, fueled by public anger over inflation and cronyism. Recent developments like Orbán's risky 2026 budget, relying on high growth projections, could destabilize Hungary's economy, boosting Tisza's appeal. The opposition's push for cooperation and calls for OSCE monitoring highlight concerns over electoral fairness, given Fidesz's media control. An Orbán win would deepen Hungary's EU skeptic stance, hindering EU decisions and NATO unity, especially on Ukraine. A Magyar victory would realign Hungary with the EU, though NATO policies would likely remain consistent. These elections reveal a polarized Eastern Europe, more so than Western Europe. Poland's nationalist shift with Nawrocki, Czechia's potential populist turn with Babiš, and Hungary's uncertain future signal a challenge to the current EU cohesion. The rise of a new national conservatism and EU skeptic movements, especially among younger voters, threatens the current EU unity on issues like Ukraine, migration, and climate policy, which seem to be creating more and more disparity amongst voters as time goes on. NATO continues to be viewed by some as a stabilizing force, but the EU's future hinges on whether these nations prioritize collective goals or, on the other hand, national interests. What does this mean for Europe's trajectory? And at what cost will there be interference to shift a particular candidate towards the forefront, given the high stakes of this geopolitical climate today and the plausible European hot war looming on the horizon, given rash decisions and a slew of other scandals and controversy emergent from within the EU itself and NATO? Well, whichever side you're on, regardless, all of this is boiling to the surface, especially given the hot topics that still remain an issue. That is, who do these European nations, specifically in the East, or the EU itself, who will they align with in the coming years and consider as allies? The buildup of the industrialized militarization of the EU, and of course, the ongoing conflict that is occurring in Ukraine. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. Give us a like if you enjoyed this and share it with your friends and whoever. And please comment down below what you think. Tune in next time.